Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on such a beautiful day. Welcome to my home office. I really appreciate you taking time out of your workday to be a part of this live webinar. Today, we're going to be talking with Michael about engineering services. So hopefully you're in the right spot. If not, stick around anyway. Might learn something new today. So just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone that has signed in is being muted with no video. So if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat box and we'll get to them at the very end when we do the Q&A portion. Also, if you would like, you can select the speaker view instead of the gallery view. It just helps you to see us a little bit better as we're moving through the presentation, but feel free to use whatever works best for you. So for those that haven't met me before, I'm Sharon and I'm the owner of an interior design studio here in Edmonton called Weaver Design. We're a full service design studio, so we offer services ranging from paint consultations, window coverings, all the way to construction drawings and project management. So we pretty much do everything related to interior design. So we started doing these webinars a couple months ago. I'm really passionate about supporting other local businesses, and given everything that's been happening in our communities due to COVID, I really wanted to do something to help these small businesses. So our first webinar was with Michael Draper, who's a real estate agent with Edmonton HQ. We also did one recently with Ashley McCarney, who's an HR consultant and owner of Involvi Consulting. And then just last week, we chatted with Laurette Lee, who's an employment specialist, and we talked about steps to finding your dream job. So if either of those topics interest you, I'd encourage you to watch the recording by going to our website, and that's weaverdesign.ca/webinar. They're also posted up on our YouTube channel. So if you search Weaver Design, it should come up. If you can't find it, just let me know and I'll help you out. So today we are featuring Michael, who's the president of CVL Engineers here in Edmonton. They offer civil, structural, and geotechnical engineering services across Western and Northern Canada. So welcome, Michael. Thank you for being our guest speaker today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your professional background and how you came to start CVL Engineering?
Sure. So myself, I've always loved building stuff. I've always been in construction, going back to when I was a kid, helping my dad finish our basement and doing some work there, building stuff in our backyard. And then I had the fortune of being able to work as a handyman for a couple of years when I was in high school. So it's something that I've just always enjoyed. But really quickly, I realized that being outside on a day like today on a rooftop, putting shingles down was not quite what I wanted to be doing. So from there, I figured, hey, engineering, I like math and I like what I do here. So it gave me the opportunity and sort of drive to get into that. I grew up here in Edmonton, but I went to the University of Waterloo in Ontario. It was an amazing experience that gave me the opportunity to literally travel the world and work. And so I was fortunate enough to work around the world on a number of projects before coming back here. And after I graduated, after I graduated, I went up north and spent 6 months working up in the Yukon. Had a lot of learnings and growings up there also, and then came back to Alberta. Kind of been here ever since. So that's sort of my background, and been doing engineering and project management the whole time, working all across Canada. So
awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Sounds like quite the journey. I always find like engineering very fascinating. Math, however, is not something that I'm good at, which is why I never pursued going into like the architectural side of design. Obviously that's something that's important in your industry.
Yep.
So I know I touched a little bit on some of the services that you offer just in your introduction here, but can you go through a little bit more detail on what the services you offer and
So CVL, we do civil, structural, and geotechnical engineering. Okay. We've been around since 2014, and we've sort of offered the same stuff ever since. That's what we do. When I say civil, structural, and geotechnical, a lot of people kind of get lost in what that could mean. Mm-hmm. Generally, civil, how we define, so technically structural and geotechnical, if you want to get real nitty gritty, they're all forms of civil engineering. Civil engineering has to do with inanimate objects not moving. So you start talking about bridges, buildings, parking lots, stuff like that.
Okay.
So for us on the civil side, anything to do with roads, bridges, parking lots, you name it, if it's got to go on the ground and be there for a commercial or industrial application, we've been involved and worked on projects like that. On the structural side, designing buildings, designing the apparatuses and structure that holds them up. Wood, concrete, steel, we've designed with all of them and are well versed in all of that. And then on the geotechnical, we use that more of a stepping stone to support ourselves. There's a lot of crossover in both the civil and structural into geotechnical when you start getting into soil stabilization for civil, when we start getting into retaining structures on the structural side. And so we that's where we kind of marry it all together.
Okay. Awesome. Very interesting. Thank you. So I know whenever you're hiring a professional, like it's so important to do your research because no two companies are the same. So having a skilled consultant, I mean, it really helps with like keeping your project moving forward. There's always problems that come up on site. So having somebody that's very knowledgeable will help you navigate through that and deal with those problems as they come up and alleviate a lot of that stress that happens. So what advice would you have to those that are looking to hire an engineer consultant for the first time? Like what are some of the things people should be looking for?
So there's two sides to that coin. The easy one that everyone should be asking is, one, are they licensed? So can they provide you a copy of their APEGA or a PEGAS or a PEGAM or Engineers BC license number?
Okay.
In Alberta, as well as certain other jurisdictions, you also need a permit to practice if you're a corporation. So those numbers should be readily available to them and easy for them to provide. And if you want to check yourself, all of the associations across Canada have member directories where you can go and you can check. And it's very, very important to do that, to make sure that the person that you're hiring is licensed to actually do that, is allowed to actually do what it is they're saying they're doing, especially when you start talking about some of the structural and civil implications. And if your house falls down or your deck falls down, which unfortunately does happen, you want to make sure that the person responsible is held to account. The second part of that would be insurance, making sure that who you're hiring has insurance, not just commercial general liability, but as an engineer, we also have professional liability insurance, so that the person that you're hiring, if they screw up the design, you have a way of being compensated for that, and having that remedied and fixed correctly, so that you're not living in a house with no deck because it fell down. And then the third, or the flip side of the coin, would be similar to hiring an interior designer or hiring anybody that's going to provide you a service, is making sure that they have the experience and personality that you get along with. There's a nuance to finding the right answer and finding what works best for everybody. There is always more than one way to do it, and finding what works for you and finding somebody that helps you find that answer is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the insurance one is a big thing, that, if things do go wrong, that they are covered and they're not just going to leave you high and dry. And
Yep.
Yeah, personality, I absolutely agree. It is a big part of it as well too. You're going to be working pretty closely with that person on a regular basis. So you want to make sure that personalities fit too. It's not just about their experience, even though that's obviously an important aspect for sure. So.
100%. We as a company are very driven by relationships, and a lot of our clients are repeat clients, repeat customers, because we try to find the people that we mesh with and that we can help.
Absolutely. And not everyone's going to be the right fit, right? That's why we have those initial consultations, so that we can meet each other. And it's just as much as it's for you to learn about the project, it's also for them to see who you are. So
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the struggles that I have in my industry, and I'm sure, Michael, you can relate to this as well, is not being included early in that design process. oftentimes clients will reach out to me after they've already signed that commercial lease for 10 years, where they've started renovating their home already, and now they're realizing this is a lot of work and I need some help on this. So having those conversations early in that process, it really helps things to move efficiently. It helps cost effectiveness as well. Those are all very important things. So from your perspective, why do you feel it's so important to collaborate with your engineers so early in that process?
I firmly believe that early engagement is important because what we do at the start dictates everything. A former boss of mine many years ago would always tell me that the 10% at the start and the 10% at the end is what drives everything. Everybody can do the 80% in the middle, but it's getting that 10% at the start and the 10% at the end right that matters. And so that early engagement is about getting that 10% at the start right. And a big part of that is, how are you going to execute it? You know, from a structural perspective, if you want to use wood versus steel, if you want to use precast concrete versus modular build, all of that has a cost, all of that has a schedule, and all of it has an overall aesthetic and finish that varies depending on what it is you're going for. And so finding the right balance of all of that is critical. And the earlier you start looking at that and start understanding what all of the options actually are, the better the chances of you getting to the right end result that you as an owner or you as a client want can be achieved.
Absolutely. So that's definitely one challenge that I think we all kind of experience. Every industry is going to have their own set of challenges. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, and what are some of your engineering challenges that you experience, and what would be your advice for preventing those things from happening?
So some of the challenges we run into all the time is knowledge, lack of knowledge, clients not having a clear idea of what it is that they want. It's hard for us as engineers, or yourself as a designer, it's hard for us to get to an end result when the client or the owner doesn't know what the end result is. A moving target makes it really, really difficult. One of the biggest challenges that we're running into nowadays, though, especially in the current economic climate, is to a certain extent commoditization of what it is we do. I will readily admit I'm not the only engineer in town. You should act like I am and always come to me. But
that would be nice, right? I'm the only interior designer in Edmonton too.
I'm not. There's other guys out there, and there's other guys who are stronger at some things than I am, and that I might be better at than them, and so forth and so on. But there's also a cost associated with how I function versus somebody else. I have 5 wonderful staff who make my job a lot easier and are great to work with, and collectively we are a powerhouse in my opinion. But there's obviously a cost associated with that, and in today's climate there's a lot of people who are very concerned with price, and unfortunately, tying in with the conversation about early engagement, they're very concerned with price, but on a micro as opposed to a macro scale. And so the example I always use is, if my price is $10,000 on a $2 million project, but I can save you $100,000, then does it not make sense to hire me versus the guy who's $5,000, but who keeps the price at $2 million? So, it's one of those ones that, like, I think that there needs to be a lot more conversation as it relates to what your people's expectations from the engineers and the designers are, and what the end result's going to look like, to really understand where that value is coming from, and what those relationships and all of that knowledge base translates into.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hear it all the time, you get where you pay for, right? Somebody that's cheaper isn't necessarily going to be cheaper in the long run, and maybe they're going to be cutting corners or not having the skills to execute the job properly, that it's going to end up costing you. So yeah, it's instilling that value and that trust with clients is definitely a part of it, for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you, Michael, for answering all of those questions and kind of talking to us a little bit about your engineering services and everything that you offer. We still have some time left, so if anyone has any other questions for him, again, feel free to pop that in the chat box. We can go over that. I did have some questions that came through just on the registration forms, so we can go through that as people are typing out their questions. This one's kind of a fun one for you, Michael. It says, what's the coolest thing about your job?
The coolest thing about my job, in my opinion, is that I get to build stuff. Like and as a designer, the ability to take something from fruition right through to completion is phenomenal. Like I've personally been able to experience walking across a bridge that didn't exist, and to know that there was nothing there before and now you can walk across it is a very cool experience.
Yeah, so I would agree with that as well. I mean, watching everything come together from a simple line drawing to now it's an actual space and being able to walk through that and seeing how excited that tenant or that homeowner is, that's definitely an exciting moment for sure. So does anyone else have any questions? I put our contact information in the chat box as well. So if you have any other questions that you just don't want to post live, you can feel free to reach out to either one of us that way as well. Give you guys a couple moments. All right, well, looks like there's no further questions for you. Thank you again, everyone, for watching this webinar and for all of your great questions. As always, if there's anything we can help you with, please reach out to either one of us. Again, the chat box has our contact information. This webinar was being recorded, so I'll be sending out a copy to everyone that's registered, and it's also going to go on all of our social media platforms. So feel free to watch it again, share it out with anyone that you feel might be interested in this topic and just couldn't be a part of this live one today. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing a lot more of these live webinars. Originally, I'd planned to do them every third Wednesday, and it's looking like we're now doing them pretty much every Wednesday. So I encourage you to continue to check out our website so you can see what else is coming up. I haven't made it quite public yet, but we do have some coming up in August. So we're going to be chatting with Crown Automation is our next one. We're going to be talking to a local IT company called Shift Support at the end of, or in the middle of August rather, and then at the end of August we're going to be talking with a bookkeeping company. So lots of exciting things coming up. If you have any suggestions for other webinars you would like to see, maybe you want to be a part of one, feel free to let myself know. We want to make sure that these webinars are of interest to you guys, so love to hear you guys' feedback. So thank you again. Thank you, Michael, for being a part of this webinar today and being our guest speaker. It was nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and it was a lot of fun.
It was. All right, everyone. Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your lunch and the beautiful day.